Good morning, folks. This is a presentation about the accounting and coding issues related to CARES Act funding. My name is Roger Hingorani. I'm a director of Federal Fiscal Monitoring. Our group is responsible for conducting all types of audit reviews, investigations of federal funds awarded to the school districts. I will let David Marks introduce himself, and he's the one who will be guiding us on how to code these fundings in your financial records. David?
Good morning, Roger. Good morning, everybody out there. Like Roger said, I'm David Marks, Director of Financial Compliance. Most of you are aware of what my division does, but if you're not, we oversee the AFR reviews. We also oversee the Financial Accountability Systems Resource Guide, which has the coding in it. And so that's partly why we're going through this today. We're having to add some new fund codes to the FASRAG. And then we also do student attendance audits, and we issue first ratings and many other things. But that's not the point of today. Today, the point is to go over some of the accounting issues that we've run into for the different grants that we've received from the federal government. And then also for other federal money that you are receiving from other governmental entities. So we did create two new fund codes. Fund 266, which is the ESSERS fund. And this one is used to account for federal stimulus funds that support an LEA's ability to operate and instruct its students. And this was the first federal money that we received out of the gate, and it's available for use for both 1920 and 2021 school year. And this is the portion, this is the fund amount that also showed up on your summary of finances. And then also we created Fund 277. This one has a few multiple funding streams going to it. And you can see down toward the bottom, some of those funding streams. So the TDEM CRF LEA reimbursement program, which we'll talk about specifically because of the accounting for that one has changed. The Operation Connectivity Bulk Purchase Program, the Operation Connectivity Bulk Purchase Program, the local match, and then the Operation Connectivity Prior Purchase Reimbursement Program. And if you remember, some of the expenditures that you had dating back as early as March 1st will be reimbursed. So what you see, oops, didn't give you a chance to look at it. So you've heard from the agency a couple of ways of accounting for it. The first way was to record the expenditures in the general fund and track them locally because Fund 277 isn't available for the 1920 school year. And then in in the 2021 school year, you'd record the revenue in Fund 277 and then transfer the revenue out. Or you heard that you would reclass your 1920 expenditures into 2021 into Fund 277. Well, yesterday I talked with an auditor who had spoken with GASB, and GASB didn't like either one of those options that we chose. And so now we have the new way. This is the only way that you can record those pre-award costs specifically. And so what you do is you record your 1920 expenditures in Fund 199. And you track it locally, just as we've said before. And Fund 277 is not going to be available for 1920. And then in the 2021 year, when you've received your reimbursement, you'll record the reimbursement in Fund 199 instead of recording it in 277. So the key to that is the change is instead of recording the reimbursement in Fund 277 for fiscal year 2021, you will record that reimbursement that you received for those pre-award costs in Fund 199. And then also this will be a reconciling item on the CFA, and you'll have to show the original paperwork and purchase expenditures and support if your auditor is asking for those. So just to recap, I wanted to make sure that this is clear. So I added an additional clarification slide in here. You record the reimbursement in 2021 in the fund that expended it in the prior year, 1920. So if the district is claiming funds from the prior year that were paid for with general fund before they received the award, then the receipt of that portion must go in Fund 199. You cannot record the revenue in 277 and transfer it or move prior year expenditures into the current year. And then for fiscal year 2021, you can only move expenses. So if you've already got some expenses recorded in 199, you can move those expenses into 277 if they're qualified for 277. You can move those from 199 into 277 by crediting the expense in 199 and expensing it in Fund 277, and that's for the current year only. And then we put together a few of the frequently asked questions that we're getting. Question number one, I have questions regarding the guidance we have received on recording the expenditure revenues for fund codes 266 and 277 and compliance with GAAP. If we are claiming reimbursements for 1920 transactions in the general fund, would we need to record a receivable and revenue for the amount of those expenditures to be in compliance with GAAP? And also, would we need to record those transactions on our 1920 CFA? I'm going to read the questions and then we'll have answers as we kind of we'll kind of combine all the questions into our answers because they repeat themselves. Question number two, if fund codes 266 and 277 are not available for use in fiscal year 2019-2020, should we be recording the revenue and receivable in the general fund? Would recording revenue in fiscal year 2021 for fiscal year 1920 expenditures allow for proper matching of revenues and expenditures? And would we encounter issues in recording these expenditures on our CFA? How are districts recording their county and or city care funds? So those are the match funds, if you remember that we briefly mentioned. So the answers to those questions, first, for Fund 266, which is the ESSERS, since the district received the notice of the grant award early in the summer before the end of the fiscal year, even for those June 30s, you were able to offset that revenue for 1920. So that one you would record a receivable and a revenue for. For the pre-award costs for 277 or the CRF funds that now you will be booking into the general fund or wherever you pulled money to have those to pay for those expenditures in 1920, you will not record a revenue or receivable for them because you don't know how much you're going to receive, and you didn't have a NOGA that was issued before the fiscal year ended, and then that's supported by the GASB implementation guide in the second bullet. And then for Fund 277, as I mentioned, those funds weren't available until October, so you can't accrue the revenue for those. You can record the expenditures in Fund 199 using your local option code. You can track the expenditures, and they may be a reconciling item on your CFA depending on how you record that. And then also you record the receipt of those funds in 199 in the fiscal year ending 2021. And then Fund 277 will be utilized for current year expenditures for, so if you have expenditures for fiscal year 2021 that qualify for any CRF funds, then you would record those in 277 this fiscal year because it's now available. And then the Government Audit Quality Center also addressed the not matching revenues and expenses, and you can see a slide that I took from a presentation that they did. And then the final piece of that I wanted to share with you guys is there's several federal revenue codes that you may be utilizing depending on the source of those funds. And so I captured the 4 that I could think of that you may be utilizing. So 5919 would be your federal revenues that are distributed through a city. And then of course, 5929 you're all familiar with. That's the federal funds that you receive from the Texas Education Agency. And then 5939 would be federal funds that you're receiving from other state governmental agencies. So if you're getting funds directly from TDEM, you would record those there. And then if you're getting any funds from the federal government directly, then you would record those in 5949. And with that, I'll leave it on that screen there. And it was a short presentation. And so now I guess we'll start going through your questions you have.
So David, I can take the first questions about the ESSER reallocation amount. I'll read the question. I have a question about the ESSER reallocation amount. We allocated all of our original money to payroll costs during pre-award time. So we can use the reallocation money to those same payroll costs back in March. May that we paid out of the general fund, one of the teacher we only used part of her salary during the time because there was not enough ESSER money to cover whole salary. Or do we need to do something else? Can we amend to put the reallocation money in a different category? I hope that makes sense. Okay. So number one, if you are trying to reclass any pre-award costs, that cost has to occur before the beginning of your grant, the NOGA date. So as it was approved in the original application. So if you have a pre-award cost that needs to go back before whatever the application date was, you would really have to amend your budget and your grant application to include that cost, And this could be a little bit tricky because you may have already completed your audit. So you may want to check with your auditors to see if they would like you to do that. So definitely you can't just reclass something that is not approved in the pre-award schedule. So definitely check with your auditor. And yes, you would definitely have to amend your budget to include those costs. Next question, we received $300 per enrolled elementary and secondary student from our county. Will this be recorded in 277 or 199? I'm not sure what part of money this is coming from. If it is coming through one of those funding sources that David showed us on their slides, one of the slides, then it could go to 277. Otherwise, well, again, this is, if it's a new money coming in 2021, then they would show up in 277. Otherwise, you can record it under 199. And David, you can always jump in if you feel that I need to clarify my answer.
Yeah, I was going to go ahead and explain on the funds from your county. You need to find out which funding source they used. Similar to what the agency did with the PPE initial amount that TDEM had sent out. We tried to figure out what the funding stream was for that, and we were unsuccessful. So therefore, we had y'all classify that as a state revenue code. In this case, depending on what funds the county used would determine what funds you would be using. And if it's similar to the matching, then Roger's correct. It would be Fund 277. And then while Roger, we had a question that was kind of goes along the lines of what we were just talking about with the county match. And so for the county funds, you would record that with a 5919 object code.
What does a district do if the prior year is already closed and audited? I'm still trying to figure it out. David, what are they talking about in this sense?
So my guess is her audit is done, and she's wanting to know if we needed to if she needs to do anything else or amend her audit. I don't think she does, because the biggest change that we had was for fiscal year 2021, where we were recording the revenue not in 277 anymore, but in 199. So that's the only impact that I can think of for the audit, but that's going to be your fiscal year 2021 audit, not your 199 audit, or your 1920 audit, sorry.
On the asset, most of the costs are as for pre-award. However, when we try and draw down, Teal is using the date of. Okay, the question is on the ESSER application, most of the costs were submitted as pre-award. However, when we try and draw down, Teal is using a date of August. I think this was, this is discussed in the FAQ. This is, you can certainly reach out to the grant administration for, they have an answer for this one. It's also probably included in the FAQ. But if you want to send me an email, or, you know, we can have these questions, some of these questions that are related specifically to the reimbursement of funds or grants or applications, we can definitely answer to them at a later time. Somebody wants to see a slide, Fund 277 again. Slide number 2, David.
Okay.
Okay. The next question is, yeah, go ahead, David.
I guess I was going to take this question partly because it's starts going into first. So how will Fund 199, Fund 266, and Fund 277 be reported if reported through PEMS on the mid-year? So that's your mid-year PEMS submission that you submit after your audit is complete. We want to make sure that we don't trigger a failure to match our financial audit by the 3% variance, which is a PEMS indicator question that is being referenced there, our first indicator question. So for Fund 199 and Fund 266, similar to what we did with the ARA funds years ago, we are combining 199 and 266 for compliance purposes, and Fund 277 will not be reported in 1920, but will be reported in 2021, but it will not be combined with the general fund for the compliance. So it will be kept separate. So a follow-up to one of our questions, Roger, was it was CARES money that the county received. So that would be recorded in Fund 277 with object code 5919.
We received funds from under CFR, from our city under CFR. So I understand correctly that the revenue needs to be recorded under 277-5919 and the expenses tracked under Fund 277. That is exactly what, David, you just mentioned, right? If it is coming from the county or city.
Yes.
Would you go back over the options for CRF coding that changed from what was published earlier? So David, you can go, we had 2 options for them.
Yeah, but so the other 2 options we had, but they're not options anymore. After the news from GASB, we're not going to use those as options. But I'll go ahead and repeat them. The first option that we had, and you probably have seen it on documents that we have sent out. The first option was that you record the 1920 expenditures and you record those with some kind of local option code so that you can track them. And then in 2021, you would journal entry out those expenditures into 277, even so you're crossing fiscal years with those. and then record the reimbursement revenue in 277 so that you won't have a fund balance in 277. Then option 2 was you still record the 1920 expenditures, you track it using a local option code, but then in 2021, you record the revenue reimbursement that you receive in 277, and then you would use a transfer, so a 7300 series, and transfer the revenue back to the general fund, essentially reimbursing the general fund for those expenditures. And that was the purpose of both of those, was to reimburse the general fund or whatever funds you use to make those expenditures in 1920 to help the district start being able to serve students again and whatever you had related to the pandemic. But GASB has since said that they don't approve of either of those options, and so they want us to do the option, I'll say number 3, but now the only option, which is what I talked about, where you record the revenue in 199 or whatever fund that you originally had those expenditures in.
Charter schools general fund code is 420 instead of 199 like ISD. Do we still need to code COVID-19 expenditures to 199? And I believe the 420 is the right code that you would use.
Yeah, 420 is the correct code for charter schools.
Right. We have a lot of questions, David. They are talking about funds coming through cities or counties, and so they want to know if they use 199. I believe that all the CARES Act funding, whether they're coming from any funding source, should be coded to 277. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So yeah, you may have to use different revenue codes to identify those funding streams, but they all should be coded to 277.
Yes.
We have a lot of questions coming in. David, jump in if you see something that.
So there's a question on the recording the PPE supplies that they received from TEA. We do have guidance out about recording those supplies. You record a revenue and expense, but it'll be a state revenue. The fund code for Operation Connectivity Programs is Fund 277. Unless you have more details you want to add to that, but generally those reimbursements for Operation Connectivity are all going to be Fund 277.
They want to see the slide for 266 again, David. If you want, please
Okay.
share that. The new allocations in ESSER do not impact foundation fund. Is that correct?
The new allocation.
I guess they're talking about the additional funding.
I guess I need more. I mean, ESSERs and state funds have a relationship, but that's, I don't know if that answers their question or not.
The question, yeah. What fund code do we use for provider relief funds? What is the appropriate accounting treatment? I am not sure what the provider relief funds is.
Maybe they're just asking about CRF.
If it is, yeah, we've already answered that question. Should the 199 expenses be transferred to 266 for pre-award costs in FY19 be included in our FY19-20 CFA? I don't think so, because those were basically, you basically reclassified those expenses from 266 to 199 during that period. So I do not believe that you would have to do anything with CFA. And please jump in, David, if the information is not right. Is there a supplement, not supplement provision when spending funding from 277? Yes. Unlike ESSER funds, this 277 does have supplement, not supplant provisions. So charter schools, instead of using 199, use 420. I lost the question.
So charter schools and city. No, so for charter schools, you're not gonna, there's still not gonna be the transfer over to 277. Unless the expenditures are for the 2021 year, because 277 wasn't available in 1920.
Okay, we have a clarification. The provider relief fund, I believe, was the SHARS reimbursement. The SHARS revenue, that's what they're talking about. It's in 289 as well. I do not have the information on SHARS coding. David, do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's the SHARS money they're getting from HHSC. It gets recorded to Fund 289.
Okay, we paid operational connectivity in 1920 out of Fund 199. It was recorded as a credit to cash and debit to 1410 prepaid. Now in 2021, we are receiving city, county, and TA local match. Is it correct that we record 2021 revenue in Fund 99, but the expense is 277 as we receive all the items recorded? No, I think that's where the David was trying to explain. All the expenditures and revenue have to be recorded under 199. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, if that's the fund they use, then that's where they would record.
That's where they would, it needs to go back to.
Yep. So there was a question on Fund 266 revenues and expenses recorded in 1920 was based on initial award. How to record additional funds added now? You would just record the additional information in the 2021 school year, unless I've missed something on that question.
Right. Okay, we have provider relief fund is 289, object code 5949. I guess that is an answer. Is there a guidance on how 270 reimbursement may spend allowable expenditures? I think the different programs have different criteria. You just need to check with the appropriate program requirements to see how they should be spent. If all of the ESSER funds were in 1920, were spent in 1920, could we use the indirect cost in 2021? I think the expenses and indirect costs are tied to each other in the fiscal year. So if that was the case, then if all your money was spent, then I think the indirect costs will follow whenever you spent that money. What do you mean by reconciling item on CFA? Is that for the schedule itself in the notes perhaps to reconcile receipt to expenditure, or just in work paper for our auditors? And David can answer that.
So the reconciling item in your CFA, yeah, it goes in the notes. If you think about how you record your SHARS revenue or SHARS expenditures and revenue in the CFA, it's similar to that. So yes, it goes in the notes of the CFA.
I think this is a good question. We are a charter school that received PP protection, payroll protection forgivable loan. We use the locally defined federal fund 289 to track revenue and expenses. Was that okay? I believe that is an okay, right? Because it is still considered a federal funds, or was there a different guideline for that?
For the, I'm sorry, I was reading another question. What was?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the PPP money that the charter schools received.
Yeah, it's a federal money, so it needs to be treated like like a grant.
Right. Okay, so 289 is the correct. Go ahead,
Yeah.
David. You can read some of these.
So clarification needed. I stated 277 is not available for operation connectivity in fiscal year 2020. Instead, Fund 199. However, auditors will need to include on CFA for fiscal year 2020 because that's federal money. So operation connectivity is not available for 1920 school year. So that's Fund 277. But it is available for the 2021 school year. And yes, it will go on the CFA for your 2021 audit.
If the expenses will remain at 199 instead of 277 for 1920, do we not mention that it as a recon item on CFA in 1920 and wait till 2021? I think you would wait till 2021 because there are, that's when the 277, you're getting the reimbursement for those expenses.
Yeah, that's correct. You didn't, for 1920, you didn't know if those expenses were going to be reimbursed or not. And so you didn't have a NOGA in place or some other form of a contract that would show that you were going to get reimbursed for those. So there isn't anything that you do for the 2020 or for the 1920 CFA. It's on the 2021 CFA.
Okay. Money spent in FY 2021 that was reimbursed by county under CARES Act funding would need to be transferred from other funds to 277 and the revenue recorded in 277. Object code 5919. If it's from the county, yes, 5919. Money spent in FY20 that was reimbursed by the county in FY21 under the CARES Act funding would be recorded under the fund that was expended. I.e., if the funds were expended in 1920 and from 199 and you're just receiving a reimbursement in 2021, then yes, the funds would be, the revenue and expenditures would both need to be under 199. I hope that answers your question.
And then a question is charters, how do we calculate anticipated funds? Not really sure on the meaning of your question, unless you need to have something in place that states how much funds you're getting before you can record it. So I'm not, generally don't record an estimated revenue.
Can you use money received for expenses from 1920 for PPRP? I believe all the PPRP money is just available in 2021. So I'm not sure if that question is, can be applied here, because as far as my understanding, all the PPRP money is just, between the last couple of months is ending on December. So, however, we did not receive bulk order in 2021. So should we code computers in prepaid 1920? Again, I'm not sure which funding source are we talking about. So it can make a lot of difference, depending between the ESSER and 277 and all that stuff.
So will Fund 277 expenditures be included for the state allotment compliance? And that answer is no, it will not be. It's being treated as any other federal grant.
Correct. Reimbursement from a county, revenue should be posted in 5919. What about the expenses? It depends what type of expenses do you have. It should work according to the regular object code, whatever the expenses you have. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, even the function code. I mean, it's, you know, however you're directing those expenses, it works the same as any of the
Right,
expenses.
just like any other regular grant, yeah.
Yep.
When does the Operation Connectivity Grant Program end? I believe it's December 30th, not December 31st. But I would definitely check back on our website that has the latest information, but I believe it's the 30th and not 31st. So if the 2021 CFA shows 700,000, then your TDM CRF reimbursement is 400,000. In the notes, you are still subject to a single audit for 2021, correct? I believe that is correct, right? Because the total expenditures exceed $750,000.
Well, they have 700,000. Unless they're combining those two, the 700 and the 100, then they would have 800. So
800, yeah. So if
uh,
that's the case, they would definitely be subject to.
yeah.
So
Anything over 750.
right. For the
Please-
reimbursement, yeah, go ahead, David. Sorry.
Please clarify the award date for Fund 277. You just said October 2020. What is the exact date? The award date, I don't know the specific award date. I know payments were starting to go out in October, November, but I don't know the exact award date. You need to check back with your federal program person.
David, Roger, PPRP allowable date started May 21st.
May
There are other programs under the same fund with different start
Right.
dates. You have TDIM, local match. So you specify the program and we'll cut down on the confusion of the start date, but PPRP is May 21st.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
For reimbursements for CRF in 2021 for expenses in 1920, the fund will be 199/420 with a 59XX revenue code. Yes, that's correct. If the object code for the TDIM CRF reimbursement is to be 5939, and as a charter school, we coded COVID-19 expenses to Fund 420, will this cause a problem with PEEMS to code the revenue to Fund 420 5939? Don't believe that it will cause a problem.
I think to clarify, County Cares funding received 2021 to reimburse 1920 expenses. The revenue should be recorded in 199. Since you did pay those expenses from 199, there was no 277 available in 1920. Yes, those revenues would be recorded under 199. David, I'll let you take this one. Can you code different CARES Act parts be coded to Fund 277, CRF TDM, LEA reimbursement 278, comma 2? I don't know what that means.
So I'll try to answer it a different way, I think. So your pre-award costs, your costs from 1920, whatever funds you use to pay for those costs, you would record a federal revenue in that fund. For any CARES Act CRF funds that you are getting this year, either through actual revenue or reimbursement or through Operation Connectivity, that would be recorded in Fund 277 with the different federal revenue object code, depending on the source of that federal revenue. And so that's the last slide that I had up. Hopefully that answers your question.
And David, this is a really good question. I was told that PPP loan proceeds are not subject to single audit and not reported on CFA. Is that correct? I believe that is the correct information, right? But because it is still federal funds, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be reported on the CFA or not. I'd have to do some research on that one to see, because you know, it changes over as a federal grant. The original recording of it, and if they don't meet all of the guidelines and if not 100% of it's going to be reimbursed, then they have to record that as a loan. So they have to record the long-term liability and whatever the payment schedule is that they negotiate with the federal government. But if they do meet all of the guidelines for it, and it's and they get their notice that it's no longer going to be repaid, then the guidance was to treat it as a grant. After that step, I'm not sure if they're going to have to record it as reported on a CFA. But I certainly could find out if you want to shoot me another email.
I think we have some guidance about that. Somebody's posted, you know, about that PPE loan. But again, we'll have to do some research before we can answer you those questions. All right. I'm trying to go back.
I'm reading this. I'm smiling at this one because it's. I just find it kind of funny. So the question is, ugh, can you code the different CARES Act reimbursements as? And we didn't get the rest of it yet. So whoever's question that was, I do find that amusing, but I do need some more information to help relieve the ugh part of that.
Can you spend new ESSER allocation in 2021 on the 25% local share of the PPRP if you amend the time period on the application? That is a question that needs to go to PPRP folks, but I believe you can do that. I'm just not 100% sure about that. Matt, any thoughts on that one?
There's not a local share requirement in PPRP. The local match program had it, so you can determine your funds between ESSER and all these, but there's no local match guidance or requirement in PPRP. And I'll post the CRF page for anyone that's got questions about PPRP.
Hey Matt, do you want to do that right now, or are you just gonna?
Yeah. The page, it's a due date today for anyone on PPRP. It's a general page link. So the customer service email for PPRP questions is going to be where you want to go. I'll put it in the chat in the Q&A, but Roger and David will be telling you the same thing, so you won't get a quick answer on PPRP if you ask it here, and I'll post it in just a second.
Does the match for Operation Connectivity also end on December 30th, Matt?
Right now, all CRF funds from federal end December 30th. So the local match program is closed, and we're still making payments to those that applied in time, and those would have been schools that did bulk purchase, prior purchase from the same CRF funds with different dates and different guidelines, closes today for applications. And my answer made sense to me, but Roger, did that answer their question with the different reimbursement programs? Local match, there's no action to take unless you're in in that program and you applied on time and you get a direct question. The local match program that required local share is closed. And other than corrections to applications received on time, there's nothing more to do in that case. Prior purchase closes today.
A little further down, there was a question, Roger, again about first. If I understood what was stated earlier, it was mentioned that 199 and 266 will be combined for compliance purposes related to the first rating. How will that occur if we're not reporting Fund 266 through PEMS? Would mean Fund 266 needs to roll into 199 for PEMS reporting purposes. No, Fund 266 is going to be reported in PEMS, and it'll be available for you guys to submit your data through, I guess, in a couple of months. Let's see, yeah, we're in December, so your mid-year PEMS submissions will be at the end of January, or starting at the end of January. So 266 should be available in PEMS at that time. It's Fund 277 that's not available.
Okay. How much time do we have left, Matt? 10 more minutes? Okay.
10 more minutes, and with the number of questions, they're being voted up. So if you want to go back to the top,
Okay.
Okay.
That's kind of resorting a little bit.
Sure.
Okay.
David, you see anything that we haven't answered?
With the increase of ESSER, will that reduce the 2021 FSP funding? That's one of those I'll have to check on. I'm not sure. So you're welcome to just shoot an email directly to me, and I'll be happy to answer that. And then if we need to post something in one of the FAQs that we have related to COVID, then certainly we'll do that.
How do we record districts 25% of PPRV? Do we move funds from 199 to 77 if it's in the current fiscal year? Whatever funding sources you paid, you can move that to 277.
Will the new discussion with GASB be laid out in the FAQ? Yeah, we'll update the FAQ with the new information that we just talked about today. Can you please summarize the Q&A on the handouts? Is that the question and answers that we had from on these slides? If it is, basically it's saying 266 is available in 1920 and 2021. And Fund 277 is not available till 2021. And then as far as recording the receivable for Fund 277, you cannot record a receivable because you didn't know what the amount of funds that you were going to receive was. For 266, you could record a revenue and receivable because back in June, we issued language that communicated the amount that you were going to receive.
I'm not sure about this question about the treasury funds. David, you want to take a shot at it?
Is that the one that they're asking about the $500 and what they need to support that? That's new guidance that we just issued last week. So I think it's trying to provide the school district some flexibility that they can spend up to $500 per student without more documentation than that.
If we receive CARES fund from city, will it be coded same as funds received from county as mentioned above? I'm assuming you're talking about the revenue code. Yes, that would be the same revenue code.
And then Roger, I think we do have a question on to make sure I understand Fund 277 does have the supplement, not supplant requirements, correct?
Absolutely. And Matt, you can support us over here, right?
Yeah, it retains identity as federal funds, and
Right.
in the chat I've posted that page for both programs that we have, the prior purchase, all of those trainings and the slides that restate all of this are there in the recording to the training as well.
So yeah, folks, do careful with those funds. They do have supplement on supplant requirement, unlike ESSER.
Roger, we have one on, is there guidance on how 277 reimbursements may be spent, allowable expenditures? Probably need a little more detail on that, but if they're talking about the 1920 expenditures that we talked about, then in essence, they've already spent those funds. So the money you'll receive in 2021 just replenishes those funds that you used to make those initial expenditures. So your support for the reimbursement is the expenditures you had in 1920.
Are we going to make this presentation available to them, Matt? We have some questions on that.
Yeah, so briefly, this recording will be saved to the grant, to the TEA YouTube page, the slides and all the other information. Anyone that registered, even if they weren't able to join, we have email addresses and we will share it. So the recording, we will capture the questions if they're unanswered. Several, you've got a response to email your question in more detail, but we'll gather all of that. So even if you had colleagues that registered and couldn't join, they'll get the recording link and slides as soon as they're available.
David, do you see anything that we can answer?
I'm scrolling back through right now because I know that we're about to run out of time, and so I'm trying to quickly go back through
I
some
see.
of them.
Can you please confirm again if 266 fund needs to be recorded on CFA? Yes, they need to be recorded under CFA, just like your any other federal grant.
Question, did you say that we cannot record the amount due from the CRF in 1920? That's correct, because you didn't know what, well, one, 277 isn't available, and two, you didn't know what funds, the expenditures you had in 1920 that would be reimbursed for the CRF. And so ESSER's, if you remember back in June, we told you how much you would receive, and that's why you're able to record that. But for the CRF grant, you didn't have a NOGA or any other contracted amount that you could record.
Yeah, I just saw a question. They are just now receiving funds from city and county. Can they still go ahead and participate in the reimbursement program? Matt, you want to address that?
No, again, the local match program closed.
It's closed.
Closed
Okay.
October 15th. You can still receive the funds, but there's no more matching funds from TEA for that. Same CRF funds are funding the prior purchase program, so it is indeed closed.
Okay.
Let's see. The So federal funds can be used for technology on distance learning purchases. That's a true statement. So thank you for that clarification. And I think that's
I think
Yeah.
the last one, to clarify, if we spend 199 funds from 1920 to purchase devices, with the reimbursement received in 2021, 277 be treated as 199 or 277 when spending the funds. Since you did spend funds from 199, the revenue has to be also recorded under 199.
Well, we certainly still have more questions. What do y'all want to do now? I think we're at time though.
Right. Folks,
We
may have
will gather the unanswered questions as well. They've been recorded, and then we can go back through those as well. I think many are answered in other guidance in other places, and then we'll send that with the recording. And then we'll include email addresses in the notice for more detailed questions we weren't able to address. And we can vote for an encore of David and Roger.
I just want to thank David for participating and giving us so much good guidance on these coding issues. I know we've had so many different changes and all that stuff, but I think we finally have the answers and we can live with that. So thank you, David.
Sure. Hopefully we do. We have the answers, because
Hopefully
if not, yeah, I will not have much hair. So thank you guys for participating and listening to our information today. Thanks, Roger and Matt, for putting this together and getting us together to all discuss this, and hopefully we were able to provide some clarification to them.
Thank you all. Take care and be safe.